The NASCAR Cup Series just made its second stop in the Irish Hills of Michigan, and it was barely better than the first one that we had there earlier in the season. Frankly, the type of racing that we have at Michigan with the 2019 package is honestly not my favorite type of racing. I don't really like it at all. It's momentum based racing. I'll explain a little bit later on the episode, but it's not my cup of tea per se in NASCAR. But to start things off, Brad Keselowski won the pole. Penske showed some speed throughout the weekend, and they would prove to be contenders at the front of the field, along with some Joe Gibbs racing cars, who didn't really focus on speed so much as handling in qualifying. So they qualified a little bit slower, but during the race, two of their four cars especially showed very, very fast pace, and Stewart-Haas Racing had a really fast car in terms of Kevin Harvick, and Hendrick Motorsports had some decently fast cars as well. But start of the race, Keselowski jumps out to lead, Harvick in second, and it's pretty much those two riding 1-2, and Harvick can't make the move on Keselowski. They ride like that. Harvick ends up having an issue, cuts down a tire and has to come down pit road, and that actually opens up a gap for Brad, but then quickly challenged by Denny Hamlin, who closed in a great bit and actually gets by Brad Keselowski in a hurry. So Hamlin gets to the lead and pulls away from Brad Keselowski. Really, the best part of stage number one was the end of the stage. When some pit strategy came up, Martin Truex Jr. stayed out as long as he could. He actually started last in the race. He actually had a good outing at the end of the race, and he ended up taking fuel only on the pit stop in the stage, while many others took 4 or 2 tires. It got him out in the race lead. They needed to hold off Denny Hamlin. The problem was Kyle Larson in front was trying to stay on the lead lap and battled with Truex greatly and slowed the 19 down, which allowed Hamlin to close in. Hamlin actually got around the 19 car, and once he got caught in lap traffic and going side by side with Bubba Wallace, 19 flew right back on around the 11 car, and Truex ended up winning stage number 1. Stage 2 was more the same. Most of the stage went green flag racing, and we saw most of that, just green flag racing. Stage 1 went completely green. Stage 2 was looking like it was going to be like that until I believe Brad Keselowski spun out. I believe that happened in the second stage. Brad Keselowski cut down a tire and did an amazing job saving the car. I have to say, it was a very, very cool save to see how there were sparks coming out from the back of the car because of how low the car was and how it was hitting the ground. He kind of slid and drifted through 3 and 4 and actually almost had the car saved to where it wasn't going to spin out, but still an amazing job by Brad Keselowski, and kept him in the race. But unfortunately for him, he could not capitalize on some things late in the race, and he had a pretty mediocre finish due to some strategy and whatnot. But that set up a late race or a late stage restart. Where there was 1 to go in the stage. Some drivers came down so that they could stay out at the stage yellow. Others stayed out looking for playoff points, stage points, whatever it was. So Truex had the lead, and this actually really, really hurt Martin Truex Jr. because he played the same strategy he pulled in stage 1. He took fuel only, and when he did that, he went from, I believe he had a 0.3 of a second lead over his teammate Denny Hamlin. He went from that to having an 8.5 second lead over his teammate Kyle Busch. At that moment before Brad Keselowski's yellow, it was JGR 1, 2, 3, 4 with Truex, Kyle, Hamlin, and Jones. On the restart, Jones gave Kyle Busch a nice push on the bottom. Truex had no help up top, but Kyle Busch got around, held off Martin Truex Jr. to the line to win stage number 2. However, that was not it in stage number 2. Coming off turn 4 to take the green checkered flag, Aric Almirola stood in the gas and got up into the side of the 8 of Daniel Hemric, sending him into the wall and into the 3, spinning Austin Dillon through the grass, giving Daniel Hemric damage along with Aric Almirola damage. So 3 cars in all wrecked there, coming to the end of stage number 2. The last stage started off with a lot of yellow flags. We got some yellows. The 53 ended up wrecking in stage number 3. The slowest car on the racetrack wrecked in stage number 3. And the last yellow of the race was actually Ricky Stenhouse Jr. spinning in turns 3 and 4. Brought out the yellow flag at a very interesting point in the race. This was with about 50 laps of racing to go. The fuel window at Michigan was about 46 laps, give or take. So these drivers are going to be a few laps short on fuel. They're going to have to save some Sunoco Racing fuel in order to make it to the end of the race. And boy, oh boy, were we gonna have a fuel mileage race? With stage racing, you don't normally see fuel mileage races anymore. Before stage racing, you would see, every now and then there'd be some fuel mileage races, like, Pocono and all that. Stage racing is kind of limited. It's still possible to have, but it has limited the amount of fuel mileage races we have. Watkins Glen has been a fuel mileage race twice under the stages. The 600 in 2017 was a fuel mileage race, but otherwise, we don't really get fuel mileage races. Watkins Glen was supposed to be a fuel mileage race. Some yellows came out and kind of changed that around. Pocono was going to be a great fuel mileage thriller, I thought, and then Rick Ware Racing Car stopped on the racetrack because of a broken camshaft and brought the Yellow Thunder 10 to go. So the question was, were we going to get something like that in Michigan where fuel strategy, fuel saving, or were we going to get the yellow flag to just kind of null all that out? Well, to save some time, we didn't get a yellow flag. We were going to go however many laps that was green to the end. I think it was like 48 laps green to the end. So it was a long way to go for sure on that tank of fuel. Early in the restart, Joey Logano jumped out to the race lead in the 22, which is actually kind of a disadvantage for the 22 because being out front, this is a racetrack where with the 2019 package, you run wide open. You are not letting off the gas at all. So there is no way to save fuel. If you let off of the gas to save fuel, everyone's going to blow by you. So being second or third in the draft of the car in front of you is actually more advantageous than being the race leader. Ryan Blaney, who's running second, was able to suck up onto the back of the 22 at half throttle down the straightaway in the draft. Use the draft to stay with the 22 and run some pretty competitive lap times. However, for Ryan Blaney and Brad Keselowski, they had issues of their own. Ryan Blaney ended up not getting his fuel tank full, and he was a gallon short or 3 laps short. For Brad Keselowski, it was even worse. They tried to stop and go, and the fueler barely got any fuel in the car. Just did not get the gas can attached or whatnot, and Keselowski ended up being 10 laps short and actually had to pit with 11 laps to go. So he was out of the factor. He was running inside the top 5 when it happened. Just a strategy call by his crew chief, Paul Wolf, to get track position, and it just didn't work out when they didn't get fuel in the car. If they got fuel in the car, they may have been in maybe a boat Ryan Blaney was in or so. But so that left Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Denny Hamlin inside the top 3. Joey Logano lost the lead to Kevin Harvick, who then continued to drive away. Logano started to save some fuel. Joey Logano pitted with about 3 laps to go. Ryan Blaney ran out of fuel late in the race. Paul Menard sputtered in 3 and 4, then had to get to his reserve tanks. I mean, if there was one complaint I had about NBC for today's race, it was the fact that they did not show enough of the fuel mileage ending. What they did was Kevin Harvick had enough fuel for sure. He was 2 laps to the good. He had enough fuel to do burnouts and whatnot. He drove to victory lane under his own power. The problem with NBC was they showed Harvick crossing the line, and then they didn't show anything else after that. The rest of the field is so far back and running out of fuel, they could have switched to the backstretch where cars were jumping around trying to get inside the top 10 and moving through the field because of fuel mileage. I mean, that was how crazy it was. I mean, I watch on race. I listen on RaceView. Listen to the official scanner. So if there's penalties, I know. If there's a yellow, I know about it. Stuff like that. I like to kind of know, and I like to hear what it's like up in the officials booth and what it's like to run a race like this, and what maybe happen. Like, say, there's a penalty to someone for this, or, restart order was messed up. If people are like, well, NASCAR didn't give them enough time, I could say, hey, they were yelling at them for 2 laps and they didn't get going, so they just threw the green flag. So what I normally do is I listen to the officials, and RaceView is normally used for its 3D model of the cars. However, I use it for the track map. It basically just shows an overhead of the track with the car numbers going around. So you can see where every car is, and you can see if someone, if they say, on the official channel, if there's some sort of crash that they need to tend to call a yellow, they have officials at every turn or at every part of the track. So an official will go turn 2, and then obviously the head official will look and go put out, and then I can look at turn number 2 and see who's in the wall, who's stopped, whose dot is stopped, whose dot is slow. At one point they went and said check the right side of, I think an official said turn 2, and I looked and I saw the 48, which was slow. He got into the wall early in the race, and then they said check the right side of the 48. So I knew Jimmy hit the wall, stuff like that. But I watched overhead, and it's really cool. It exceptionally funny because I don't think I've ever watched on RaceView a fuel mileage finish, and it was exceptionally funny to see numbers just dropping off like flies. It was pretty crazy how close these drivers were on fuel. Obviously, the first driver to drop off was Joey Logano, then Ryan Blaney. Paul Menard sputtered in 3 and 4, ended up losing a ton of spots. I think he lost like 7 or 8 spots because his car sputtered. Chase Elliott sputtered at the white flag on the front stretch. He lost about 4 positions, and he got back going. I think he finished inside the top 10. Other drivers that ran out, Kurt Busch, exceptionally slow. He ran out of fuel. Martin Truex Jr. ran out of fuel on the front stretch and actually had a battle. I forget who it was with, but he like drag raced someone to the line as he was out of fuel, and he actually ended up beating them. Austin Dillon and Chris Buescher ran out of fuel off turn 4 and coasted their way to the start-finish line 13th and 14th. But I was one of the fans at the end that did not want to see yellow flag. We barely get to see fuel mileage finishes with the stages, and I wanted to see a fuel mileage finish. This is the type of fuel mileage, fuel mileage is the type where I don't have anyone in the battle at all. Like, there is no one in the battle for me because my driver's retired and I did not move on to a different driver. So for me, it gets me like kind of pumped up. Like, I'm kind of a little nervous, like who's going to run out of fuel, or will we get a yellow flag and just ruin everything again? Even though Kevin Harvick, who was leader at the time, knew he had enough fuel, it was still pretty fun to watch drivers at the back of the field, towards the back of the top 10, end up running out of fuel. And we saw some crazy names get inside the top 10 at the end. Kyle Larson got up to third. He was a non-factor all race, I guess you could say. Truex ended up getting fourth. He beat Daniel Suarez the line. Suarez got a top 5. And Kyle Busch, who was a horrible car all day long, won stage 2, was barely talked about all race. He ended up in the 6th position. Ryan Preece got 7th. So it was just kind of crazy, seeing cars run out of fuel. And I'm glad we got to see a fuel mileage finish because they're always fun. I always like to see some fuel mileage finishes, even though my driver has normally come out in the short end of the stick with them. But it's always fun to see, drivers run out of fuel towards the end of the races and who has saved enough and stuff like that. Pocono 2015 is one of my favorite finishes I've watched in person, just because of how unpredictable that finish was. You had Jeff Gordon and Dale Earnhardt Jr. running outside the top 10. Dale Jr. is running outside the top 15. Cars started running out of fuel, and they finished 3rd and 4th in that race, So it was just kind of, it's just kind of amazing to see, When you're at the track, it's a little, you don't know what to focus on, but you also get to see more. Like, 2015 Pocono, NBC did not do that race justice, even though they showed a lot of cars running out of fuel. There were so many cars that came down pit road and ran out of fuel, more than what NBC showed. And obviously, the same here at Michigan, they rarely showed anyone out of fuel. I think they showed Kurt, and maybe they showed Truex and some others, but they didn't really show a lot of cars that ran out of fuel. But overall, it wasn't a race I personally enjoyed. I enjoyed the finish of the race. I think that's what brought it up to above what the June race was. The June race obviously had that yellow lane, the race which set up that overtime restart, which was overly hyped, and Logano just pulled away and won the race easily. But yeah, this race had some fuel mileage, and fortunately cars did run out, and it wasn't just kind of like, oh, fuel mileage, and then no one ran out. A lot of cars ran out of fuel. So it was cool to see. Harvick dominate, he didn't really dominate, but he had a really good car. I'm sure he was one of the cars that had winning speed, and it's the second win of the season. First one came out Loudon. So he's actually getting some momentum late in the season. He's got top 10s, I think, in the last 4 races. He's had some of the fastest cars the last few races. It wouldn't surprise me if the 4 car is actually a championship contender and wins, more races at this point in the season. I'm sure Harvick can win 5 races by the time the season's over. The 4 has just been so fast this season. But to talk about this type of racing that we saw in Michigan, this is momentum racing at its finest. This is a race where you pull out to pass and you have to hope you have help. This is one of those where Kyle Busch, I think, summed it up perfectly in his post-race interview. He said, I would gain 3 spots through a corner and lose 4 spots down the straightaway. That's how it is. If you get a nice run through the corner, but everyone goes low away from you, you have no draft, 0 draft, and everyone's just going to fly right by you. So it sets up passes, sure, and the passing ratings will go up, and the lead changes will go up and stuff like that. But it's not really, it's like tandem racing passing, when you had to force to change partners. That was a forced pass. And forced passes because you got broken up in the draft, so then anyone who was still stuck together would go on by you. That was forced passing and kind of manipulative passing. That's what Michigan is kind of set up to be at this point. You try to make a move in the corner, you get tight underneath the guy because you have, so much downforce and the gigantic spoilers and dirty air and all that, and you lose the nose and you go up the racetrack and you lose 2-3 spots, and then that counts as passes. In my opinion, it's not the type of racing I like to see in the Cup Series at all. This is just kind of, I don't even know, because it's just like you can't really form the runs. They made it a little bit better with the PJ1, how you could kind of move up and try and get that, but it didn't really help. It was too far up. Drivers have been pleading NASCAR to please move the PJ1 down, and NASCAR moved it down like 2 feet, but it didn't help at all. I mean, it was so high up. You're running wide open anyway, so if you're running wide open against the wall, that's not going to be faster than a guy running wide open in the middle lane. It's just not how it works. Michigan, post-repave, post-2012 Michigan has sucked, and it's going to suck until that track wears in. Is it going to wear in ever? I don't know, because it's been 7 years since they repaved it and has done zero progress in wearing in whatsoever. I just don't like the type of racing Michigan has produced with this 2019 package. That's a common theme for me this season. I really think the only tracks it's vastly improved is Chicagoland and Kansas, and even then Kansas was putting on good races with the 2018 package and the 2017 package and the 2016 package, and Chicagoland had a thriller in 2018 and 2014. It had a good race in 2016. So it is what it is. We're stuck with what we're stuck with, and drivers can keep voicing their opinions about it, and some drivers get not happy about it. Like Matt Benedetto after practice on Friday said, well, just did practice and held my car wide open, so we're not going to be driving with our feet this weekend. Obviously, Matt Benedetto is one of them that would rather a driver show their talent rather than a car show its speed. So, yeah, that's basically it. For the playoffs, that actually got kind of interesting. So Clint Bowyer wrecked in the race, which hurt him greatly. He is now on the bubble. Ryan Newman is in. Ryan Newman is in the playoffs. I think he's 12 points up, something like that. He's like 12 points in. Clint Bowyer's only 6 points in. Daniel Suarez, with his top 5, is now only 6 points out, and Jimmy Johnson is down like 12 or 16 out or whatever. So for Jimmy, there's a lot of work to be done. He is in trouble for sure. I mean, he has 2 SHR cars in front of him, and Ryan Newman, who has been consistently point racing for the past 5 years of his career, so he knows how to do this. Jimmy Johnson is just used to winning and running top 5 and all that. So we got Bristol next, Darlington, which was the 2019 package. I don't know how Darlington's gonna be, and we'll see how Indianapolis is with the 2019 package. But I don't really know if there's much more to say. It's just kind of, that I don't know how to express how I feel about it. How I feel about the package at Michigan in 2019. Obviously, Michigan has never really worked with many packages, but I also think that with the repave, it hasn't helped at all either. But something ironic I do want to add is that NASCAR has pushed this aero package as the best thing that they have, and how we like what we're seeing. And, this is great racing. We're seeing all these different passing numbers, whatever, right? And then, so 2018 package was mostly a driver's package. The drivers were like, hey, we want less downforce and more horsepower and all this stuff. So they got, 2-inch tall spoilers. When fans said, hey, we don't like this, people aren't winning enough, there's not 3 wide racing every single lap, we got this package, which is extremely, ridiculously, stupidly high downforce with stupid spoilers on the rear of the cars and a lawnmower engine. And when a race goes bad with it, instead of being like, oh yeah, that race was bad, it's always, we like what we're seeing, or, hey, packages aren't supposed to work at every racetrack. Well, no shit. That's what the 2018 package was. It didn't work at every racetrack. It worked at racetracks It didn't work at every racetrack. 2019 package, sure, it works at some racetracks. It don't work at every racetrack. But then the funny part is, we never used PJ1 with the low downforce packages. And lo and behold, we get this package which is supposed to look great. And if any casual fan turns on the TV and looks and doesn't know that there's PJ1 on the track, the racing looks great. But, and you could say, oh, well, the package is doing its job. Look at this. But it's the PJ1. The package does not fix Pocono. The package does not fix Michigan. The package does not fix Kentucky. The PJ1 has done stuff like that. Bristol did not fix Bristol. The PJ1 fixed Bristol. PJ1 fixed Loudon. You know, it's not really like, oh, the package did this at some of these racetracks. No, the PJ1 is doing the work for the supposed perfect package that has produced, you know, some great racing over the season. They're going to use more PJ1 at racetracks in the future. They're going to use it obviously at Bristol. They use it all the time at Bristol. The rumors are they're going to use it at ISM in Texas again. So honestly, it's just kind of stupid to me how NASCAR's like, oh, this package is great. You know, everything's perfect with it. And then they're like, well, let's add some PJ1 to the tracks. Like, that's a problem, man, when you're trying to force different grooves because you cannot follow the car in front of you because you have stupidly tall spoilers on the rear of the cars. That's a problem, man. Shorten the spoilers, give them horsepower back. I don't care. We don't need to have 750 horsepower, but god dang, give them 100 more horsepower and slash those spoilers in half. That's all I want. I don't even want 2-inch tall spoilers. Just give me 4-inch tall spoilers, and I only want 100 more horsepower. That's all I want. But obviously, we're on this path because this is what's the future of NASCAR. While IndyCar's going to like 1,000 horsepower and all that stuff, which is stupid. But, you know, if IndyCar can do it, NASCAR could probably do it. But once again, we need new manufacturers. So that's it for Michigan. Bristol next race. Thankfully, that'll be something where we won't have to talk about the package. We can just talk about the good racing Bristol produces. Unless, of course, people don't like the new Bristol. Because screw multi-groove short track racing, apparently. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys for the next video.